Welcome, viewers, to our channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories every day. Clara stared at the blank screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, waiting for inspiration to strike. The house was unnervingly silent, a stark contrast to the chaos that had reigned only weeks before. Jason was gone, taking with him his loud laughter, biting criticisms, and the heavy shadow that had stifled her every ambition. The silence was deafening, yet strangely liberating. For the first time, Clara was free from his scorn, free to dream beyond the narrow role he had assigned her. Jason had made it clear that her dreams were foolish. On the night he left, he hadn't just packed his things, he'd taken her confidence along with him. His parting words echoed in her mind, "You're chasing a fantasy, Clara. You'll never be anything more than a housewife clinging to dreams you'll never achieve." At the time, his words had crushed her, but only for a moment. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of tears, anger, and self-doubt. Yet from the wreckage of her broken marriage, something unexpected began to rise. A spark of defiance. Jason's attempt to crush her spirit had ignited a fire she hadn't known she still possessed. The idea for the book came to her in the most unlikely of places. One afternoon, in a small, run-down coffee shop she could barely afford, Clara started jotting down fragments of thoughts. Little snippets from her life with Jason, the man he had been when they first met, charming and full of promise. The slow disintegration of their relationship, the subtle and not-so-subtle ways he had belittled her, and the cold, final night he had walked out, accusing her of holding him back. As the words poured onto the page, Clara realized this wasn't just a story of heartbreak, it was a testament to resilience, to finding strength in the face of abandonment. She held nothing back, pouring every ounce of pain, every searing memory into her writing. The process was cathartic, and for the first time in years, Clara felt she had found a purpose. She didn't tell anyone about the book, not her friends, not her family. It felt too raw, too personal. But once the first draft was complete, Clara couldn't shake the nagging urge to share her story with the world. Nervously, she sent the manuscript to a handful of publishers, each email sent with a trembling hand. Weeks passed with no response, and doubt crept in. Had Jason been right? Was her story nothing more than a desperate attempt to make sense of her broken life? Just as she was ready to give up, an email arrived that changed everything. The subject line read, "We love your story." Clara's heart raced as she opened the message. A small but respected publishing house was offering her a deal. They believed in her story. More importantly, they believed in her. The advance was modest, barely enough to cover her bills, but Clara didn't care. For the first time, someone was validating her voice, her experience. The months that followed were a whirlwind of editing, meetings, and photo shoots. It was overwhelming, but Clara embraced it with a resolve she hadn't known she had. When the book was finally released, Clara held her breath, waiting for the reviews to pour in. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Readers devoured her story, connecting with its raw honesty and emotional depth. The book shot up the bestseller lists, and Clara found herself in the spotlight, a place Jason had always insisted she'd never reach. But Clara wasn't finished yet. The success of her book was just the beginning. She had a vision for where her story could go, and she was determined to chase it. Standing backstage at a bustling event, her heart raced as applause thundered through the hall. Clara clutched a copy of her book in her hands, the glossy cover catching the light above her. The title, Rising from the Ashes, felt almost prophetic now. What had started as an emotional outpouring of pain had transformed into a cultural phenomenon. "Miss Sinclair, you're on in 5, a young assistant said, peeking through the curtain. Clara nodded, inhaling deeply. The assistant disappeared, leaving her alone with her thoughts. The journey here had been surreal. She was no longer the timid, hesitant woman Jason had left behind. She was Clara Sinclair, best-selling author, motivational speaker, and, to her surprise, an inspiration to women around the world. The door to her green room swung open, snapping her from her reverie. It was Janet, her publicist, holding a tablet in one hand and an urgent look on her face. "We need to talk about the Forbes interview," Janet said briskly, walking toward her. "The Forbes interview?" Clara raised an eyebrow. Janet grinned. "Oh, didn't I mention? They've selected you for their Women Who Lead feature. You'll be on the cover. For a moment, Clara stood frozen. Forbes cover. It felt like stepping into a dream. But the weight of her hard work anchored her. She hadn't just stumbled into success, she had earned it. That's incredible, Clara said, her voice steady despite the rush of emotions inside her. It is, Janet agreed. But they want something big for the interview, something fresh. Do you have any plans for what's next? They're looking for more than just a recap of your journey so far. Clara smiled faintly, knowing it was time to reveal her secret. She had been holding it back, unsure if she was ready to share it. But this felt like the right moment. I do have plans, Clara said, her voice growing more confident. Big ones. Janet's eyes widened. Do tell. Clara paused, savoring the moment. I've been approached by a film studio. They want to adapt my book into a movie. We're in the early stages, but it's happening. Janet's jaw dropped. A movie. Clara, that's monumental. It is, Clara said, her excitement building. But it's not just about the movie. It's about telling a story that resonates. I want to show women that they can rebuild, that they can thrive, even when everything feels lost. Janet's grin returned, wider than before. This is perfect. Forbes is going to eat this up. The assistant reappeared, signaling that it was time. Clara handed the book to Janet and straightened her posture. With a final deep breath, she stepped onto the stage, greeted by a standing ovation from the packed audience. As Clara spoke about her journey, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. She wasn't just sharing her story, she was reclaiming it. Every word was a declaration of her worth, a reminder that Jason's mockery had been the very fuel for her rise. Meanwhile, across town, Jason sat alone in a dimly lit bar, nursing his third drink of the evening. The TV above the counter blared the evening news, but he wasn't really paying attention. He hadn't been paying attention to much since his business ventures had begun to crumble. Turn it up, someone at the bar called, pointing at the screen. Jason glanced up, squinting at the image. His stomach dropped when he saw Clara's face. She stood confidently behind a podium, the headline beneath her photo reading, best-selling author and rising icon. The bartender chuckled and shook his head. That woman's incredible, huh? Left with nothing after her husband ditched her, and now she's on top of the world. Jason's grip tightened around his glass. The heat of humiliation crept up his neck as snippets of Clara's speech played. Her words about resilience, determination, and refusing to be defined by others' expectations struck a nerve he wasn't prepared to confront. For the first time, Jason felt something deeper than regret, shame. Back at the event, Clara was fielding questions from reporters when a young journalist asked about the upcoming movie adaptation. Clara smiled warmly, her answer carefully considered. Yes, the story is deeply personal, she said, but I think it's one that needs to be told. It's a reminder that our struggles don't define us, they shape us. And in the end, we get to decide who we become. She didn't mention Jason by name, she didn't need to. But Jason, sitting alone in that bar, knew exactly who the story was about. The sleek offices of the studio towered above Clara as she stepped out of the black SUV, flanked by her agent and publicist. Inside, the boardroom buzzed with excitement. Executives from the production team lined the table, their faces alight with enthusiasm for the film adaptation of Rising from the Ashes. Clara had reviewed the screenplay draft only days before and was eager to see how they planned to bring her journey to life on screen. As Clara took her seat at the head of the table, the room fell silent. The director, a seasoned woman with an eye for emotional storytelling, began her pitch. We want this film to be more than just a story of resilience, she said, her voice filled with conviction. It's a testament to the strength of women everywhere who rise above their circumstances. Clara, your narrative is going to inspire generations. Clara smiled, though her thoughts briefly drifted to Jason. She had moved on, but the scar of his betrayal still lingered. He had been a part of her story, and now, through the movie, the world would see a version of him reflected back at them. Later that evening, Clara sat in her quiet apartment, her thoughts drifting as she scrolled through her social media feed. Countless messages from readers flooded in, each sharing how her story had touched their lives. One comment stood out. Your book made me believe in myself again. Thank you for showing us what's possible. She leaned back, letting the words sink in. It wasn't about Jason anymore. It was about this. the connection her story had created with others. Across town, Jason sat in his darkened living room, the flickering light of the television casting shadows across his face. He had seen the headlines, watched the interviews, and, even in a moment of masochistic curiosity, bought Clara's book. Every word stung like salt in an open wound, but he couldn't look away. His new wife, Emily, stormed into the room, slamming the book down on the coffee table. "This is about me, isn't it?" she demanded, her voice trembling with rage. Jason stared at her, unsure how to respond. "The manipulative, self-absorbed villain in her story, that's me," Emily continued, her voice rising. "You told me she was nothing. You said she was clinging to you. But it turns out you were the one holding her back." Jason tried to speak, but Emily wasn't finished. "You made me think you were some successful, driven man. Now look at you, living off the scraps of your failed ventures while she's on Forbes. What does that make me?" Emily stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Jason was left alone with the book in his hands, the weight of its truth pressing down on him. Meanwhile, Clara stepped onto the set of her movie for the first time. The air buzzed with activity, actors rehearsing lines, crew members adjusting cameras, designers perfecting the set. Clara felt a swell of pride. This was her story, her legacy, unfolding in a way she had never imagined. As filming progressed, Clara was invited to sit down for an exclusive interview with Forbes to coincide with the movie's release. She spoke candidly about her journey, her struggles, and her triumphs. When asked about Jason, Clara hesitated before smiling. "Jason was a chapter in my life, but not the whole story," she said. "I've learned that sometimes people leave so that we can find our true selves." The article went viral, with readers praising Clara's grace and strength. Jason read it in silence, each word a reminder of the life he had mocked and the woman he had underestimated. The movie premiered to critical acclaim, with audiences flocking to see Clara's journey brought to life. On the red carpet, Clara dazzled in a gown that symbolized her transformation, bold, elegant, and unapologetically herself. Standing beside her was the film's director, along with a handful of actresses and producers who had all played a role in bringing the story to fruition. When asked what the film's success meant to her, Clara paused, her gaze steady. "It's a reminder that every ending is just a new beginning. I wrote Rising from the Ashes not to dwell on the past, but to show that we can all rise, no matter how far we've fallen." The camera flashes illuminated her face, capturing the moment for eternity. In the crowd, Jason watched from a distance, unnoticed and unremarkable, as the crowd erupted in cheers for Clara. In that moment, Jason realized the bitter truth: she had found her second chapter, while he was still stuck in his first. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.